Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 161 of the Chronological Read Through the Bible. Today's commentary, I'm primarily going to be looking at 1 Kings chapter 15. I had just a little bit of 14 I wanted to cover that I didn't get to yesterday. And I will put down in the bucket below the remainder of today's reading. So this really is one of these passages for today of our total reading that just covers so much history of the nation of Israel. And if I was to really unfold all of it, even in just giving a brief overview, we'd be looking at over an hour. Even though the reading content might be the same amount of actual material, the depth there is so much. So do take time. If you haven't read this portion yet today, take some time to consider what you're reading. And again, it's so wonderful with the chronological read that it's putting Chronicles and Kings together, because you need to be able to take both and understand both of them together, because they each cover some of the same time period, but they're giving a little bit more in-depth look at it depending on which of the two you're looking at. So they complement each other. They don't contradict each other. So we basically have for 17 years Solomon's son Rehoboam had been ruling the people really just with terrible sin and a very poor attitude for certain. But instead of walking with the Lord, as he had every opportunity to do, God allows everybody that opportunity to do what is right. But he chose from the outset of his kingship to do what was wrong. So God allowed the Egyptians to come in and attack the nation. God would have certainly protected Israel from the Egyptians, but because of the sins of the king, he allowed them to come in. And one of the things to show what Rehoboam's kingship would be like, when the Egyptians steal the gold shields, which I spoke of being in the house of the cedars of Lebanon. When those shields are stolen, Rehoboam later replaces them with brass shields or bronze shields. And it's like, maybe to the average person looking on, they wouldn't see them as being any different than the ones which had been there previously. Maybe he kept them very highly polished. But that shows what his kingdom was like. He replaced that which was of high value with that which was a facade, a fake. And that really is the picture of his kingship. Well, his son, Adonijah, isn't much different than he was. Adonijah comes in, and it really is the like father, like son picture. But he only rules for 3 years. We're told how evil he was, and we're told that he did not do what the Lord had wanted. And yet, here's one little thing that's interesting. He declares war on Jeroboam, and God gives him victory. And the scriptures tell us he gives him victory for David's sake. Now, David's been long gone, and yet God is still remembering his promises to David and wants the kingdom to still be preserved, despite those who are following. So the Lord still recognizes his promise to David to have one of his descendants on the throne. So it's really awesome to watch that fulfillment. But after Adonijah's death, Asa will become the king. And Asa is one of these kings who we really say he was a good king. He did not end very strong, but he still was a good king. And the scriptures really record him as having been a upright good king. Interesting enough, of the northern kingdom, where I spoke of Jeroboam and the 10 tribes there, the northern kingdom never has a good king in their line. But the southern kingdom, I can't remember the number right off, that there might have been about 18 kings for the southern kingdom, somewhere in there. There's 8 who are godly kings. And Asa is listed as one of those godly kings. And we're going to see he also is family also continues in that line as well. So Asa, he rules the kingdom very well. One of the things that he does is he removes his grandmother, the queen mother, from her position of authority. And I don't know whether it was that she was really trying to yield authority and go around her grandson, but it tells us that she had worshipped false idols. And there is a connection here with her and Absalom. I'm not sure. I'd have to spend a little bit more time picking that apart, but I think she was either Absalom's granddaughter or maybe his daughter. So Absalom, of course, was David's son that opposed him. So we have this picture, though, of Asa saying, my grandmother can't sit in this position. She cannot. She's out of here. And removes her from that position. Or it might have been his mother. Commentaries have her in two different roles, as grandmother or mother. He goes in and tears down many of the high places. He removes, it tells us, the male prostitutes from the temple. Interesting that we had something like that going on in Israel at that time. And so he begins to restore the nation, and that's what makes him a good king. But what is the holdup on him being this wonderful king? Well, he does serve for 41 years as the king of Judah. But and that's one more year longer than King David or even King Solomon and even King Saul. They all three served for 40 years, and Asa serves for 41. But at a time when he goes to war against the nation of Israel, he doesn't do it himself, and he doesn't call on the Lord to do it. He doesn't even seek the Lord on it. Asa comes up with a plan. I'm going to hire mercenaries to do this. And basically, he already had an alliance with the king of Syria, just to the northeast of the northern kingdom and bordering them. And so he basically goes into the temple, takes some of the temple treasure, and buys off the king of Syria. And the king of Syria then attacks and wages war on the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. And because of this, the Lord is displeased. First off, he didn't seek the Lord. He chooses to go to war, but through mercenaries, rather than seeking the Lord. Certainly, the Lord would have given him victory in the battle that he was facing on his own border between Judah and Israel. But he doesn't seek the Lord on this. And then we're told, because of these events, he ends up getting some sort of a foot disease. We're not told exactly what the foot disease is, but Asa is given this horrible foot disease. And it tells us that he seeks relief from going to physicians, and that he seeks the counsel of others in regards to the problems that he's having with his feet. We don't know exactly what they were, whether it was a form of leprosy or whether it was some circulatory problem. We don't know. But the one thing that we do know is he never sought the Lord. The scriptures tell us that he did not seek the Lord about this problem that he was having. And why was that? Because I think he probably realized it came from the Lord, and he wasn't willing to humble himself at that moment. Had he have sought the Lord on behalf of his health, the Lord would have answered. And that's at least the implications that we're given in Scripture. I want to take that and say to you, just because you're having a physical ailment doesn't mean that it's from God. But it also doesn't mean that it's not from God. And this day and age, for some reason, we've kind of made this shift in the church world at times, where people are more reluctant to say when difficulties come that maybe this is because I've been disobedient to God. I can't say that and point the finger at somebody because I don't know exactly if they've been disobedient or not. But what I would caution someone is the first thing that you do shouldn't be to run to the doctor, but you should say, God, have I gotten out of step with you? And if you have, and if you wait for him to tell you, then if you've gotten out of step with the Lord, correct that. Now, I'm not saying to delay medical care. I'm not saying you're having a heart attack and you're like, oh, let me consult the Lord before I call 911. Please, it's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is when you have these situations, make sure that you're in a right place with the Lord. I think some of this came about from, especially throughout the 80s, we had preachers who would say this disease, this sickness, this problem, this tornado, this hurricane is because of the sin. And I can't even say that they were wrong on those, but the approach was not always the proper approach for the situation. And this turned many people off from pausing to consider, is this sickness or is this virus or are the things that are happening to me because God wants to get my attention? Or is it an attack from the devil? In the case of Job, I covered a lot of this when we went through the book of Job, but I just want you to consider with Asa, we're told very clear, he never sought the Lord on that issue, and he lived with this severe pain. We're going to see one of my more favorite kings of the nation of Israel, and he doesn't do everything just right either, but this is King Jehoshaphat. And one of my favorite kings because of a battle that comes to the nation of Judah and how Jehoshaphat responds to that. We're going to see a little bit more of that coming right up. We're also introduced at the end of today's reading to the most wicked king that the land of Israel ever knew, and that is King Ahab. And we are introduced to the prophet who will challenge Ahab, and a prophet who will be longed for in the nation of Israel when it comes to the Passover celebration. So we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. Brothers and sisters, I thank you for being with me. I thank you for those of you who leave thumbs up, and I thank you for your comments as well. They're encouraging to me. I know I don't post the comments. Part of that's just trying to hold some continuity there. But again, I thank you very much for your joining me on this journey of having a commentary of the Scriptures. Till tomorrow, God bless.